Hi there, Ghost Oracle here, and back again with another video today. Today we're drawing a haunted house, kind of. Well, I guess it was originally just a house, and then I decided to make it maybe a little bit spookier than the original reference image. But I just did this one in my sketchbook. Did the line work, the initial line work with pencil, and then just going in on top with a dip pen. I got into dip pens about, I don't know, like 8-10 years ago. I used to draw a lot with fine liners, just like the normal pens, and at some point I just realized they weren't doing it for me, so I got into using dip pens, and in recent years I've also gotten into using fountain pens. I don't know, I find they're a lot more fun than using fine liners. Fine liners for me are kind of boring, so, but that's what we're doing here. I think I'm using a Maru Nib, which is a really fine tip nib, and then I think a Tachikawa just nib holder. So, and I'm using some Winsor and Newton. I think it's India ink or pigment ink. Let me check real quick. Wrong bottle. Yeah, it's the Winsor Newton Black Indian ink. So, a lot of time my process for traditional work, I will go in with pencil, kind of get my framework all set up. I'll go in and ink, and then I prefer to do washes over hatching. I get really bored hatching, so I usually don't do that. But yeah, and we'll get into the washes a little bit later in the video. You know, I made this video really long because I decided I didn't want to cut out a bunch of footage, but with it being so long, I'm just struggling a little what to talk about, especially at this point because I'm just inking, and it's fun to watch, but it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, fairly straightforward. You just dip your pen in some ink and then put it on the paper. I know if you're curious and interested in trying out dip pens, which I would highly recommend. They're a lot of fun, but they take a while to get used to. They can be a little crotchety in terms of working with a drawing medium, and they can be a little bit finicky when you start using them. So it's a bit of a different experience. You have to try not to dig into your paper, and sometimes it'll catch and splatter ink everywhere, which that's not always fun, but sometimes you just have to roll with it. Drawn some windows, drawn some more windows. Alright, the sketchbook that I'm using is the Strathmore Mixed Media Visual Journal sketchbook. It's kind of an interesting sketchbook because I would say it's an entry-level, like, cotton sketchbook. I'm not sure if it's entirely 100% cotton, but it's got a good amount of cotton in it. I definitely like it for noodling around with wet mediums and ink. It's pretty hefty paper. I think probably my one downside to it is that the paper isn't perforated on the side, especially with a spiral bound sketchbook. I usually like being able to take stuff out of it, but if it's not perforated, a lot of times I'll take a box cutter or an X-Acto knife to it and just rip it out of my sketchbook. I try not to be too precious with them, so I tend to wreck my sketchbooks. inking takes a while. It takes a very long while. This footage is sped up, I think, 4 times speed. And this video is still like 13 minutes long, if that's any reference. I think inking the entire thing took me probably about 2 hours. And then washes take like 2 seconds, so. But yeah. I really like how the shingles on this roof came out. I feel like I did a good job with them. I tend to get really bored with doing repetitive patterns or textures. I tend to check out after a certain point, so. Say maybe I should have cut some of this footage out, but I recorded this entire thing from start to finish, so. A little bit longer video, but hopefully you guys like it. I don't know who else is watching this. I'm just doing this for fun at this point, so. Hey, if you made it this far, thanks for sticking around. Finally getting around to doing the washes. Here's just some footage of me trying to set up, dusting off my paper because I initially inked this and then walked away for like I think it was a week. I walked away for about a week. I didn't come back to it, so. Yeah, so, and I tend to just leave things on my desk and then they get dusty. So, hence what the shaving brush is for. Oh, my voice, it's getting all croaky, sorry. Yep, just setting up my ink in my palette off to the side. There we go, just rearranging everything because it looks nice. All right. Are we going? Oh, here we are. So if you're wondering what that gold thing is in the corner, for some reason, when I was in the middle of filming this, because my cutting mat that I have underneath, which I just use to protect my desk, it had like the company logo info on the side, which you probably saw earlier in some of the wider footage shots, but it was bothering me. So I just took some acetone and wiped off the logo and then just decided to paint that section gold and draw a skull in it, because why not? Yeah, now it bothers me less. So I don't know. I don't always like other people's branding stuff everywhere. It just gets in the way. Just gets in the way. Anyway, here we are inking. I'm trying to remember. I think I typically tend to use 2 different inks. So I'll use a waterproof or a water-resistant ink for a lot of my line work. And then for this one, I believe I used an acrylic ink, which is the Daler and Rowney FW acrylic ink. I'll put a link in the bio or the description with all the supplies and materials I used, or at least most of them if you're curious. But I typically use different inks depending on what I'm doing. So, and then sometimes I'll just use Sumi or India ink for washes and things that aren't waterproof, because you can get some pretty cool washes and water effects. So it tends to behave a little bit differently than the acrylic or even some of the water resistant or waterproof inks. So in the footage, it kind of looks like I just jumped right into painting the second layer of washes, but I actually, again, walked away for a couple of hours. I did that initial base wash, and I tend to have to walk away because otherwise you're just watching paper dry, and I tend to get impatient and try and paint on it when it's still wet, so which usually results in a lot of bleeding. What was that? Someone's thumping around in the apartment. I don't know if you heard that. It was really loud. But yeah. Just filling in some of the darker spots. I probably didn't do the best job of doing the washes on this. Again, because it was in my sketchbook and I was doing this just for fun. Some of the washes I didn't go in very carefully with, so this was just a practice drawing, so maybe not my finest work, but it's just, I don't know. Just figured I'd show you some of the stuff that I like to do in my sketchbook on occasion. If you've ever done ink washes before, it can be a little bit trickier to use. They're kind of similar to watercolors, but particularly when you're working with darker colors, it's always difficult to kind of guess how dark you're going with your washes, because everything tends to dry lighter, but you don't always see you can't really tell what color or how dark the color is when you're mixing it in the palette. So it's always a bit of a hit or miss, and then sometimes I end up unintentionally going darker in certain areas. This one came out okay. I probably could have done a little bit more contrast. But again, it was just in my sketchbook and I was doing it for fun, so I wasn't overly concerned about it being perfect. So I keep saying so. I do public speaking as part of my day job, and those crutch words, they get me. I'm trying not to do them in this voiceover because I had a lot of them in the last one I did. I'm working on it. Work in progress. Alright, just doing some of the windows under the awnings. I couldn't tell if in this picture if there was like an actual balcony on that second story. It kind of looked like there was, but I couldn't say for sure. I like spooky old things, if you couldn't tell. Well, if you've made it this far in the video, first of all, thanks for sticking around. It's probably a lot longer than some of the other content on YouTube, although I've seen some very long stuff on YouTube, like hours long things that people watch, so it's kind of interesting to see. But anyway, thanks for stopping by. If you have any questions about comments or process or materials used, I'll try and link that in the description below about the materials I used. And yeah, if you have any questions about anything or just want to say hi, feel free to drop down in the comment section, and I will catch you all later. Like and subscribe would be appreciated, and thanks for coming on by. Happy hauntings.